Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. Gosh, this episode is one that is near and dear to my heart because it is something that I personally have probably struggled with the most in my life and also have had the biggest transformation around in my life, and that is money. And for you, whether you are running your own business or maybe you're working for somebody else, but you're managing your own money, if you have any element of avoidance around money, and maybe you're like me and you're good at making money, but then the thought of how to manage your money and make it grow scares you the way it used to scare me, this episode is going to be really useful for me. And in my own life, I have had such a transformational journey with money, and from a very early age I felt so strongly motivated to go make a lot of my own money and not have to rely on anybody. And so I did. And that was, when I went to college, my parents paid for my college, which I was really fortunate in that they did, because I know that doesn't happen for everybody. But I worked 5 jobs while I was in college just because I wanted to make money. I wanted to have control over my finances, and I enjoyed making money. And then, got out of college and went into corporate and started doing corporate sales and made, 6 figures and beyond early in my 20s, and had my problem was never the making money piece. I was always good at making money, but the challenge was that the thought of diving into my bank accounts every week and trying to manage the money and figure it out on my own felt so overwhelming that I never did. And so I ended up living in a lot of what I call financial avoidance for really a lot of my early career. And there was a lot of stress around money. There was a lot of anxiety that there wasn't going to be enough, or I was going to mess something up with it. And, it's money is one of those things that we're expected to be good about, but we're not necessarily educated on, and it's taboo to talk about publicly. And I really want to kind of open up the conversation for all of us to be empowered around our finances and know what the proper vehicles are to invest, and feel empowered to go in and look at our finances every week and know that they're growing and know that we're on track. And so my guest today that I'm bringing onto the podcast is someone who's really helped me do that. And she's actually my own personal financial advisor. Her name is Helen Ngo. She's the founder of Capital Benchmark Partners here in Atlanta. And I wanted to have her come on just to share, like, from a high level, in your finances, what are some things that you should be doing right now, or suggestions for you to be doing if you want to grow your money, manage your money better, get out of any sort of financial avoidance like I was in. And this is going to be, like I said before, this is going to be a great episode for you, whether you are an entrepreneur running your own business finances, maybe you live with an entrepreneur and you want to figure out how to better communicate about money, or if you're employed somewhere else but you want to get a better grip on your finances, then this is going to help you do it. So Helen comes on and shares so much. She shares some of the top mistakes that she sees people making with their money. What are some of the first things you should be doing if you haven't been working with a planner and you've been kind of winging it like I did for so many years and trying to figure it out on your own? But what I can say is, in the year or so that I've been working with her, not only my personal financial situation in terms of just knowing exactly how retirement's going to happen and feeling really empowered around my future, but also just the way I feel and think about money has dramatically changed and shifted. And working with her this year, my husband and I have bought our dream car. We moved into our dream house. We've got money saved away in ways we didn't have before. And just, it's a totally different energy and dynamic in our household because of this. And so I feel personally grateful to her for the transformation that she has helped me have. And I wanted to just have her share some of her wisdom with you as well, so that whether you're working with an advisor or not, you can be more empowered in the way you manage your finances. Because I know for each of us, myself included, not only do we want to make great money, but we want to give great money. We want to be generous. We want to be able to be generous. We want to leave a legacy for our kids and future family members. And so that really starts with getting empowered around your finances. And so the episode today is going to help you do that. So you're going to love Helen. She is a joy. She's fun. I will say there's a tiny bit of language in this one. So if you have kids around and you don't, or you personally don't want to hear that, that's totally fine. Just probably not the right episode for you, but you're going to get so much value out of learning from Helen. And so with that, let's get in and let's dive into this interview with Helen Ngo. Helen, it's so good to have you on the show. I feel like you and I could probably just laugh and like never talk about finances like we were in the pre-chat, but I'm also really excited to have you on to help us get our financial house in order. So welcome, and thanks so much for hopping on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Elyse. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, I shared a little bit in the intro about why I wanted to have you on the show, but it's funny, I was thinking back, I think it's probably been about a year since I
Almost a
connected
year.
with you first.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and the reason I reached out, and I'm guessing that a number of our listeners can kind of relate to this, I had
Hmm.
always felt like I was good at making money, but the thought of managing my money and figuring out how to grow it just felt so daunting to me that I just didn't want to deal with it. And frankly, I think for a lot of my life, like I was almost money avoidant, where I didn't want to look at my bank
Hmm.
account. I didn't want to get into the details because I just had this fear about I was doing it wrong or I was spending too much. And you know me now, so you may still say I spend too much. That's another story. but but just over the past year or so of working with you, you've helped both me and my husband Jason like get so many systems in place, and I feel so on top of my finances like I never
Oh,
have before.
good.
And I think this is such an important conversation to have. And people are, I was weird about money for a while. I'm not anymore, but I think a lot of people are still weird about money. It's like we feel weird talking about it. And I just really like I want to empower everyone listening
Mhm.
to take control of their finances, to really have a lot of knowledge in terms of not just how to make it, but how to grow it and manage it. And so that was a really long preamble as to why I'm so excited that you're here on the
Yeah,
show today.
yeah.
So, I'd love to start with just a little bit of your own backstory, and maybe you can just share with us to start, like, why did you get into this business? What makes you so passionate about helping entrepreneurs with their finances? And just let us get to know you a little bit better.
I love money, Elise.
My
I
kind
love
of woman.
I love talking about it. I love, helping others to manage it better. And I especially love talking to business owners like yourself on how you can make more and setting up systems to make more, but also manage it efficiently. But from a personal perspective, I mean, just from a background, I mean, my family and I were immigrants. And so while growing up, I was raised to that there was always scarcity, that there was never enough. And so while I was going through college, I still had that mentality. And then I was like, well, how can I do it better? Because I'm Vietnamese. My background is Vietnamese, and in our culture, typically we just like to hoard as much cash as possible. But in the United States, there's all these other resources that we have here, like retirement plans. Like there's no such thing as a retirement plan in Vietnam. Like that's not
Mm.
that's not such a thing over there. There's no such thing as retirement. You just work until you die, right? And savings vehicles and all this stuff. And what is stocks and what are bonds? Like what's investing? And so, during school, I got really interested in the financial markets after I had taken all of my economics classes. And that's how I got into personal finance. Was I was like, I want to know how to make more money from the money that I'm making. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense. And even just you sharing that right now, it was such a perspective shift for me, because I think at least most of my listeners are in the States, and we take it for granted that things like retirement planning and all these
Right.
different types of investing are just the norm. But it's so crazy to hear you talk about. It's like it's not the norm everywhere.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, most countries you just have the bank. There's no such thing as a financial planner. So even now my parents have no idea what I do for a living.
Oh my
They
gosh.
still ask me if I'm poor. I'm like, I feel poor, but I know I'm paying my bills. I don't need your help anymore, you know. So to them,
Wow.
they don't understand the concept of hiring a professional like myself to, or why other people would hire a professional like me to help them with their money management. They're just thinking like, you make money and you put it away. Like, what advice are you really giving?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? So yeah, so I got into it because I wanted, really at the end of the day, for myself, I wanted, what can I do with my money to continue to grow it? And then then I learned about the career financial planning and how to be a stockbroker. So I entered, you know, after watching like those Wall Street movies, I was like, I want to be one of those guys.
Hmm.
and and so that's how I got into the industry. Actually started as a stockbroker in the investment world, and then in fast forward, I started my business, my independent financial planning practice in 2013 to help more one-on-one clients with the personal planning and tie it in the investment management part of things from my own background. So that's how
Well,
I got to where I am
yeah,
today.
it's so interesting, and it's cool just to talk with you because I've known you for like a year now, and I'm finding out stuff that I don't know, which is really really fascinating. And it seems like you probably have a different level of appreciation maybe for what's available and how we can manage and grow our money in Western cultures, whereas it's like that's not available everywhere. So you just have
Right.
such a unique perspective on it, which I think is really helpful. So, one of the things that I think would be really useful, and I kind of think back to like when you and I first started working together last year, and I had very few systems in terms of my money. It was like I had a bunch of different bank accounts and all this different stuff, and there wasn't a ton of rhyme or reason to it. So if someone is listening and maybe they're not yet working with a planner, but they want to get their finances in order, and they're trying to figure out, it seems so overwhelming to think about all the different options. What are some of the first simple things that somebody can do to start getting their finances? And maybe I think we definitely want to talk business finances, but maybe
Yeah.
personal as well, because it's tied in so often, to start getting their finances in order.
From a personal perspective, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so from a personal perspective. And a lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs. They're running a business, so they're going to have their business finances as well. But just wherever you would tell someone to
Yeah.
start kind of like chipping away at the process.
It's interesting because at the very beginning of this conversation, you had mentioned how you've kind of been an avoider of your personal finances, but you have no trouble making the money, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is part of the equation. You got to bring money in order to even set up a system.
True. So go
So
make money is the first,
so go make
first
money
advice.
first of all. As a business owner, you got to figure out how you're going to make the money. But on the personal end, it, whatever business you are building, it trickles down to your personal life too, and what you're able to take from the business to pay yourself.
Mm,
And for me, money is just a tool. It's something tangible that you can have in your hand, and I don't really get as emotional about it as some people. I just look at it as numbers. And so the simplest thing you can do to get a grip on where you are, and I think a lot of people avoid this process, is just creating a checklist, which I have. Like, I provide you with a checklist. And I don't know if you remember going through this process,
I
but I
do.
made you gather all of your financial statements
Mm-hmm.
and organize it yourself. And you're like, oh, I didn't know I had this account. Oh,
Yep.
how is this account titled? Is it held with my husband? Oh, where did this money come from?
I remember that. Yeah. Because you end up finding a bunch of stuff that you just forgotten about.
Correct. Like an old life insurance policy that you
Mm-hmm.
signed up for, and you're like, oh, I keep paying for this, but what is it really for? I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Right? So even just creating a checklist for yourself of all of your assets and liabilities, and that's the first step, the simplest first step, but it's, I think, the hardest too, because it makes you realize what you have and don't have. I think the avoidance part of it comes in when you're like, I don't really want to face the reality of what I have and don't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's so true. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's it. So
Okay.
that
Yeah.
that that would be step one, is getting all your statements and realizing, what assets do you have there to manage, and what liabilities do you have there to get rid of.
Hmm. Well, and even coming face to face with it, like that was one of the, I would say like the disciplines I put into place this year was having a weekly meeting, like a weekly money meeting. And I think Kate Northrup calls it like a weekly money love meeting, where she and her husband get together and look at their money.
Uh-huh.
And she's got a great podcast and great books, and I love her. But we started doing that, and there was fear about it at first for me, just because I had been so financially avoidant for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we started getting into it, it was like, why was I ever afraid of this?
Yeah.
It was so much more empowering. And I actually really look forward to those meetings now. And I love my Excel spreadsheet where I look at our budget and which are things I never thought I would say. But I think that process of gathering everything and just looking at it, it's like, it takes any of the fear or
Yes.
discomfort out of it. So, so I just want you to know how helpful that's been,
Can I
for me
ask you a
personally.
question, Elyse?
Well, it depends. Yes, go for it.
I'm turning the table.
I'm an open book, I think.
When you went through that process of organizing, and then you felt as though it wasn't as bad as you thought, did you
Mhm.
think, was it because you thought it was going to be worse than what's actually on paper?
Yeah, and I think for each of us, it's like I've studied a lot over the years about like psychology of money, because I wanted to figure out my own stuff too. And one of the things for me personally that I struggled with was, like, for most of my 20s, I was just terrible with managing money. And
Yeah.
again, I was making good money in my early to mid 20s, but I would
Yeah.
overspend. And I think a lot of it had to do with feelings of insecurity from childhood and all of that. So I'd kind
Yeah.
of brought a lot of that with me. So
Mhm.
my relationship with money was feeling like looking at my bank account and feeling fear that I had way overspent and there wasn't as much in there
Mm.
as I thought, or
Mhm.
as I thought I should have. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I find is in conversations with my clients and those who I run across, they really don't have a money problem. A money problem is when you don't have any money coming in. It's
Mm,
a lack of organization and systems and how your money is flowing in the household that's probably broken, and
mm.
not necessarily really being poor.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And it actually makes me think of a question I hadn't thought about asking, but I'm
Mhm.
kind of curious from your perspective, because you probably work with a lot of, I would imagine, like you work
Mhm.
with me and Jason as a couple, and you probably work
Uh-huh.
with other couples. If one person or maybe both are struggling with some of that avoidance, what are some ways you can get the conversation going and get on the same page in terms of systems and working together? Like if someone's feeling resistance about going into it.
I think what really helps is hiring a third party,
Mm,
just like, people have therapists in couples counseling, and there's that third party, and it removes that friction between just you and him talking together. But then
yeah.
when there's that third party in the room, your energy shifts in
Mm,
a different way, and you talk to each other in a different way, almost more respectfully. I
true.
think from my own observation, because, and if they don't, because I've seen couples fight in front of me and I snap it right off. And
Mm,
it's usually either like the man talking down to the woman or the woman talking down to the man, whoever is actually making the more money. And you see the power dynamic there. There really is power in whoever's earning the most money in the household. And you can just see the dynamics of couples.
yeah.
Yeah, so hiring a third party, or even if it's just a one-time thing, and like you said, having those money dates with yourself and with your spouse or partner, and having it designated and not having any non-negotiable meetings during that time period, to interfere with that date, I think that is key.
Yeah.
And that's like developing a habit and scheduling in, just like any other client meetings that you wouldn't leave on the table, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been hugely transformational from a mindset perspective. And I think it's strengthened our relationship too. And
yeah.
you're right, it is. It's having that third party that helps so much. And for me, it was even just investing in getting your help. I felt more committed to making it work, which I think happens anytime we hire,
Yeah.
a coach, a mentor,
Yep.
a planner.
For sure.
I'm curious from your perspective, because I know you see a lot. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making with their finances? And don't
Oh,
don't call me out. personally on anything. We're going to keep this totally agnostic.
The biggest mistake, I mean, the most common is not understanding their taxes and how accounting works,
Mm,
and not hiring. They're like, oh, it's cheaper for me. It's just me. I'm a solo entrepreneur. I can do my own taxes. I mean, oh, I don't have a brick and mortar store. I'm just in the service business. And then I look at how much money they're making, and they're not writing off appropriately, or they're writing off things that they shouldn't be writing off. um like their dry cleaning. That's such a gray
mm,
area. It's like, oh, but I have to look good. I'm like, everybody has to look good for their job. Like when the IRS comes and audit you, what are you going to explain that you did dry cleaning for 10 times a month? Or I'm exaggerating
yeah.
now, but like, how do you legitimize these specific expenses, right? So that's really the number one mistake I see entrepreneurs make on a personal level, is that they're not being efficient with their tax planning, and writing off the wrong things, or not writing off enough things to take advantage of their um, role as a business owner.
Yeah. Well, and as you say that too, to me, I think that's where sometimes some of like the fear comes from. It's just confusion.
Hmm.
I think back to like, I grew up with parents who were boomers,
Yeah.
and you probably did too. And
Uh-huh.
in our household, it was like we were upper middle class. My
Hmm.
dad was the breadwinner. He made good money, but I always had the sense that we had to be so careful with spending money. It was like at any
Hmm.
moment we could go broke.
I
And
understand that mentality.
yeah, yeah. And so I think that influenced, I mean, even my dad up until this day, he does his own taxes, and he was, the CEO of a very successful company, but he would never outsource, and that was just his own thing. And so I grew up feeling like I needed to know how to do a lot of this stuff on my own, but I didn't.
Mm.
And then I think because of that, I felt like I was going to make mistakes, and there was a lot of fear around it.
Yeah.
And so, because it is confusing. I mean, heck, that's why, tax planners and financial advisors have jobs, because it's confusing. It's
Yeah,
confusing as
it
heck
is.
to most of
It
us.
is. It is. There's a couple of things. I don't have anything against you doing it yourself, but you have to be aware of what you're doing and whether or not you're actually following all the tax law changes that are happening so quickly on an
Mm,
annual basis too. So I'm for you doing it yourself, so you can be aware of what's going on, because sometimes you can go to a tax planner and they might not do it right either. You know,
true.
just like if you were to hire any professional, like a lawyer, they might not set you up as the right entity or whatever. But you have to be educated. But I wouldn't throw out the idea of hiring somebody as a third party to look over, even if it's just a one-time deal, to look over your accounting and your taxes, to make sure that you're optimizing your write-offs and any credits that you might have as a business owner. So.
Yeah, I love that advice. And I think too, it's like my philosophy on everything in your business is you should delegate as much as possible, because
Hmm.
I think for myself, for most of my listeners, it's like their job is to be the face of their business.
Yeah.
And that's really where the majority of your time should be spent. And so I like your point of, it's good to know how to do it, to know what to look for. And I'm always encouraging my clients, get everything you possibly can off your plate,
Right.
so that you're not having to focus on it. One of this to me is always just an interesting conversation,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know what you're seeing right now, but I think there's so many different like tech and tools and apps and stuff that we can use to manage money today, and
Yeah.
everything from a spreadsheet to a way more complex system. Do you have, I know a lot of your brand is about simplifying and kind of
Yeah.
streamlining the process. Do you have any favorite tech or tools that you love using or seeing your clients use to manage their money?
The tool is only as good as the person entering the data, Elyse.
Ooh,
Okay.
that's a quotable. Okay.
I should put that
That's
somewhere.
we're gonna tweet that. Yep, I'm gonna give you credit. We're gonna tweet that. That was good.
So, I mean, you know, people I'm glad you asked that question. You're absolutely right. There's a zillion different tools out there, and you can find free financial advice, free retirement calculators, and all this stuff. But if you are not entering in the right data, if you're not putting in the right assumptions for inflation, or how much you actually have in retirement, or your expected tax rates, it either looks like you're going to have a ton of money, or it looks like you don't have enough in those calculators. So again, those tools are only as good as the person who's entering the data in there.
Mm.
Some of my favorite tools, obviously, I just like the Excel calculator, because you can manipulate the data, the entries. I
Mhm.
love data. I'm a data person. I love Excel. I think the most useful thing is like those platforms that can aggregate all of your accounts in one place. I forgot which one you use, but it was pretty helpful when I looked at it.
You know what? Now that I'm thinking of it, I know I've
Was it
used,
Personal Capital or?
no, I've used mint.com. I've
Uh-huh.
used, right now we're just using a spreadsheet, but
There you go.
I mean, it's literally, it's like every week we
Yeah,
pull out the spreadsheet and look at it. So, I think to your point, it's the tool isn't going to be the thing that makes the difference.
right,
It's the person who's using it. So it's kind of,
right.
it's useful to hear from you that it's like, at the end of the day, you just need to have the right information and the right numbers and something
There you go.
simple to track
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the Excel because it forces me to look up my accounts, enter in the data. But there are tools like Personal Capital and a mint.com where, you can sync your checking accounts, your investment accounts, your retirement accounts, and it'll pull up all the numbers on there for you. And you can see at the very bottom, and it does the work for you, what your net worth is.
Mhm.
And those budgeting tools, I think You Need a Budget, you know.
Yes, that's
Um,
the one we were using. Yeah, I remember that
Yes,
now. Yep.
yes. The
Hmm.
problem with those budgeting tools is that people underestimate how much they actually spend or what their goals are. So if
Mm,
you are using one of those budget tools, whatever number you put for groceries, I would put a 10 to 15% premium on what you think it is, because usually you're underestimating yourself.
that's so true, especially in groceries, at least in our household. It's like, are we feeding 7 people or 2? I don't know, but
Yeah.
I mean, from the budget, one would think
Yeah.
it was like the old woman in the shoe over
Yeah.
here. So a couple more questions, and this is so
Yeah.
helpful. And then I want to tell people where they can go to
Hmm.
connect with you.
Sure.
One of the big conversations I think over the years in the financial world has been, do you do fee only? Do you do fee based? Like, how do you know the person you're working with is a fiduciary? And there's so many questions about this. Can you maybe give a breakdown of what the difference is between fee only, fee based, like how to know what's right
Yes.
for you? All of that I think would be
Yes.
really helpful.
So the main word is commissions, okay? A fee-only advisor cannot receive commissions. So you receive commissions from selling insurance products. You receive commissions from selling specific types of mutual funds to a client. You receive commissions from selling an annuity product. A fee-only advisor, which I just charge a flat rate, either hourly or on a retainer basis. Or with the investments, we charge a flat percentage. Like, it's transparent. It's on paper. We send you an invoice. It is what it is. There's no, oh, how much am I actually paying her? Whereas fee based, you can charge as though you are fee only, but you also receive commissions. That's the main difference. So fee
Mm,
based, it's very like, for the public consumer, they don't really know the main difference, but really it's the commission component of it. Is a fee-based advisor will be able to receive commissions.
yeah.
And in terms of the word fiduciary, I get that question a lot. They're like, Helen, are you a fiduciary? And it kind of breaks my heart that somebody would ask me that, because fiduciary just means that I have you in my best interest. And
Mhm.
what makes it so sad is that there has to be a law in my industry to where we have to hold our clients in our best interest. Like a lawyer should do that, a CPA should do that, Elyse Archer should be a fiduciary to her
Mhm.
clients. So that's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I think you're right. I just know that, like, that's what we're reading today, is like, you have to ask
Yeah.
your advisor, are they a fiduciary, and how does their fee
Yeah.
structure work? And I think it's so good to be informed. And I agree. It is sad that has to happen.
I
And
know.
I think anytime people are very closely handling money, it's like, greed happens, stuff happens. But for me, what I've liked, because I was very intentional, I think everyone has to make the right decision for them. For me personally, I was intentional that I really just wanted to work with a fee only advisor, which is how I
Uh-huh.
found you.
Yeah.
And it just feels so much easier. It's like we pay a monthly amount. It's clear cut. You're available when I need you. We have regular meetings, and it's like to me that makes me feel really comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
that there's no conflicting interests. So again, I think everyone should make the right choice for them and do their research. But I do know I think there's a lot of confusion today about what's what
Yeah.
and how to know who you're working with. And so I just want to try to dispel some myths or
That's a
maybe
great
just
question. That's a very good technical question.
I know a little something on the
Uh-huh.
technical side here, just a little bit, enough to be dangerous. This has been so helpful. Any final words of advice or words of wisdom for an entrepreneur building and scaling their business who wants to be really great at managing and growing their money?
Don't be afraid of asking questions or hiring somebody. Again, it's not a lifelong, commitment that you have to make with somebody.
Mm.
If you are looking for a financial advisor. But again, the first step is to get over yourself and just get your shit together. You know,
Amen.
just go through and do a complete inventory and audit of what you actually have in front of you, what accounts you own, how is it titled? Because all of that is really, really important in the organizational process. And then you can create the systems based on what you have in front of you on that net worth statement.
Mm.
So,
Love it. Thank you.
yeah.
Tell everyone. So I know you've got a podcast, you've got great resources for people, and I
Yeah,
know you also offer a free consultation. So tell us like where
yeah,
we can go to connect with you and how people
sure.
can book some time with you.
Yeah, so you can go on my website if you want to talk to me for about 45 minutes. And that's just a complimentary meeting. I just want to get to know you better and exactly what it is you're looking for in that financial planning relationship. And what is it about your money that you're struggling with the most? So that's about a 45-minute call to an hour. You can go to my website at capitalbenchmarkpartners.com, or you can just tune in to my podcast it's called the Live and Earn podcast. And I interview a lot of my clients on their colleagues and associates about their money journey. So,
Mm,
yeah.
it's so good too. I learned so much from your podcast,
Oh.
and I think that's something where you're different than a lot of advisors out there because you're putting out free content and free
Uh-huh.
advice and stories like that. So thank you for that, and thank you for just the impact that you've made in my life and Jason's life. We've
Oh,
made a
good.
lot of progress in the past year working with you, and just so grateful for that. So
You're a good
um,
student, Elyse. You're a good
I try. I don't
I
always
know
feel like
when you
that, but
I know when you have money dates because I start getting 5 emails on
you
one
do.
weekend. I'm like, oh, she must be
You
meeting with her
can
husband
tell.
this weekend. She must have her
Rapid
money date.
fire. Yep, we're having a money date, which means homework for Helen. So,
That's right.
Helen, this was so awesome, and thank you so much for all the wisdom that you shared. I really, really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.